Okay. I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order for June 27th at 2 p.m. in the council chambers. We are honored to gather on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. And the public may view us on the Village of Cumberland YouTube channel. So moving forward, approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, that the Committee of the Whole received the delegation of Howie Siemens, Manager, and Carrie McIntyre, Emergency Planning Coordinator, Comox Valley Regional District.
Receipt. Second.
All in favor? Carried. Please come up.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to come and present today. My name is Howie Siemens. I'm the Manager of Emergency Programs for the Comox Valley Emergency Program. Today I have Carrie McIntyre, who is our Emergency Planning Coordinator, who will provide you an information about the extreme heat information that you're looking for on your agenda today. So, Carrie.
Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you today. I think this is my first official council meeting or Committee of the Whole meeting in Cumberland, so feeling glad to be here and grateful for your time. So I'm here to talk a little bit about some of the planning that's been going on, led by the Comox Valley Emergency Program with our municipal partners and of course with Comox First Nation as well, getting ready for any heat emergencies that we may see here in the valley. And so I just wanted to say thank you to your staff, Cumberland staff, who've been working so hard with us to make sure that we're prepared for that. The collaboration groups that were already established with COVID-19 between recreation and with the communications folks have been essential to the pre-planning that we've been doing to prepare for heat emergencies. So as you may be aware, the province has released a bunch of guidance. It's called the BC HARS or BC Heat Activation and Response System Guide, and that was to provide guidance to local governments, First Nations governments, and many of the community partners at the municipal or at the ministry level on how to respond to any heat emergencies that we might have. For the Comox Valley, we sit in a region that if we were to have a heat warning, requires 2 consecutive days at 29 degrees or higher during the day and 16 degrees or higher overnight. And I bring that to your attention because it's not just about the 2 consecutive days at 29 degrees, which we have already seen a little bit this weekend. The more concerning temperature at that point is the overnight low. And that's because when it comes to heat illness, and I'm not a health professional, but heat illness can come on when people don't have the ability to recover with those overnight lows. So that's the number that I would just ask you to focus on when you're hearing some of the different chatter that's out there with various warnings that are coming out from the Environment Canada, and they're the ones that set that 26 or 29, 16, 29 for Vancouver Island, or most of Vancouver Island except for the north. So I'll just pause and see if there's any questions about that.
Yes, Councillor
Sorry,
Brown.
was it two nights of 16 and 2 days of 29?
They're consecutive. So it's that 24-hour period, 29 during the day, 16 overnight, or higher.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it would be considered a heat warning at that point, automatically at that point, initiated by the Environment Canada, which is different than a heat emergency. It's when that continues and it prolongs and the temperatures get higher. That's when you would see a heat emergency declared. And again, we have no control over that. That comes from Environment Canada. Okay, so as I mentioned before, the regional collaborative planning has been underway for quite some time. We learned some lessons from course, from the cold that we experienced last November and December and into January. And we've learned some lessons from the heat dome last year as well. And so working together to make sure that we're aligning our messaging as municipalities, so working with those communication collaboration groups to share those key messages that have been developed by those health professionals. And that's the BC Centre for Disease Control, BC Centre for Disease Control, sorry. There's also our island health partners, that's the medical health officers who've had input into this as well, as they're working with other ministry partners that look at this from a health lens, because much like COVID-19, a heat emergency is led by the health authorities that are out there and those health professionals. So we as an emergency program take our guidance from them on how to proceed. And they've provided us with a bunch of recommended actions for pre-season readiness. And I would say that we are in a really great spot with all the collaborative work that's been done across the Comox Valley. We've achieved many of those recommended actions already, so we would be eligible for additional supports if we needed them. And I think the last thing that I just want to reiterate is that key messaging and how important it is as elected officials for all of you to be able to amplify and share the messages that you'll see coming out from the province and from those different municipal communications related to heat. And that the message there is very much around neighbors checking on neighbors. It's the one thing that we've certainly learned from what happened last year is people who were isolated and already made more vulnerable by the heat were the ones who unfortunately perished. Many of them were in urban centers where that urban heat island effect was already increasing as a result of the weather outside, and couldn't get access to either a place to cool down, or they didn't have the ability to have transit. And so had somebody been able to do a wellness check on them, just even another neighbor would have made all the difference in the world. So if you could help the emergency program by amplifying that message, that would be most helpful. And I think you'll see more of that coming out from our communications collaborative group as well. And I think that's it in terms of what I wanted to share. I just wanted to offer the chance to ask if you have any questions or comments.
Does the provincial government think they would form a state of emergency if it got so hot for so long?
So at that point, if it was across the province or a significant area, it might be a recommended pathway from the province to declare a state of local emergency at the provincial level, which, as you saw during COVID, what that does is essentially trump any state of local emergency at the local municipal level. Mm-hmm. And then they would be providing us with even more guidance and pathways in terms of response and recovery.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brown?
Thank you so much for that. I'm curious if, so I live right beside a seniors housing development, 2 of them, and I worry about them. They're very small units, and I'm not sure how they're heated. I don't know whether you know how they're heated.
They're gas heat.
Yeah, so I don't think they have heat pumps, and I don't think they have cooling. Is there anything from the province in terms of support for air conditioners for elders or anything like that we could access? Or they could access?
And keeping in mind that those are more operational related questions, certainly they've been providing some guidance on how to access funds to support something like that should it occur. But the other piece here is that those buildings have their own emergency plans. Mm-hmm. And they have their own directives on how to care for their own clientele. And given that that would be more of a health professional question, I would probably defer to my partners in Island Health.
They are funded by BC Housing.
Oh, BC Housing has clear support pathways as well. They've been reaching out, especially where at-risk and vulnerable populations are concerned, to provide those cooling spaces and air conditioning units and other amenities like that, whether they're rented or pre-purchased. They've been very proactive in working with BC Housing operator-funded facilities, right down to those that serve the underhoused. Mm-hmm. And we try to support those relationships as much as possible, but it is very much led by BC Housing.
Okay.
And they just gave funding to the Salvation Army for their building for air conditioning.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Great question, though. It is a little nuanced how all these things kind of interplay.
Yeah.
But luckily they've been very proactive in supporting some of those places.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, I just find it interesting that, you know, as climate change, we kind of think about like the bigger emergencies, but we're more and more having to deal with these local sort of health issues, is what it turns out to be. The, you know, extreme colds and extreme heat, and of course, you know, disease that comes up. So yeah, I just feel like it's more and more sort of out of the realm of what we do as local government, because we don't necessarily have all that emergency training or health training, and you know, I feel like it's kind of stretching sort of yeah, our capacity, but certainly, you know, we want to be able to help with the cooling, you know, have our centers open, and we've done that. And the local governments in the Comox Valley have opened centers for cooling. We've also opened centers for warming centers in the winter as well. But it is kind of going outside what we normally do, and it's kind of an unexpected thing, and more we're having to deal with these types of emergencies due to climate change. But thank you so much for putting your minds to doing this great work. Yeah, and then to Councillor Brown, I guess one of the things too that the province is offering is, you know, building upgrades, helping people increase the R value of their homes and replace their windows, you know, doing things like that to yeah, help with the insulation. I guess it would help in both cool and hot weather to improve the R values of your homes. So that is a government funded program that's happening, and I don't think that there is enough uptake of it. I think that the province is looking for more people to do these retrofit programs, but a lot of people just aren't, you know, investing in it. And I think that, you know, people should be thinking about that, you know, as we're experiencing more and more extreme temperatures. Thanks.
Thank you. Just a comment to add to that. What I wanted to say is thank you to all of you for supporting a collaborative approach to how we prepare, mitigate, respond, and recover when it comes to disasters or heat emergencies, because disaster risk reduction is pretty much the same thing as climate change adaptation, and it definitely involves all of us, and certainly more than just responding to it all the time. So thank you for highlighting those grants.
I'd just like to add, Mayor, through the Mayor, to the Councillor Kettler. So just so you know, that they are looking at changing the building code as well. So actually having another mechanism to make those bigger changes, to actually build homes that will address both the cooling and the warming components. So.
Okay. Michelle, you had a question?
I was just going to comment about the centers, because in Cumberland, our warming or cooling centers really didn't have a lot of people use them. So I just really wanted to go back to Carrie's key messaging about neighbors helping each other, just because I'm not sure that those centers were working really, like people weren't actually making it into the centers. So really we need to keep our eye on people at home and our neighbors.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people feel they're more comfortable at home, even though it is hotter, and they don't realize the effect that it's having on them at the time. Yes, okay. And just a second, I would like to thank you very much for your presentation today, but also for the presentation you did at the regional district in educating elected people on the emergencies and how to behave in an emergency from an elected position. It is quite different, and it's going to be, well, I hope it's never has to be enacted here locally. Yes. Yeah, but it's really interesting when you talk about the different scenarios, either forest fire, earthquake, or something major happening, and we will be all in the same position. And it's well worth it to work together. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to also make your comment about how you behave. It's really about us trying to really clearly define your roles and responsibilities. It's not how you behave. We know you're wanting to do the best for the community. So I just want to make that clear. Is us just making sure you're comfortable with your roles and responsibilities. So.
Yes, thank you very much. There was many questions about that.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have the BC Housing Affordable Home Ownership Program prepared by Karen Albert, Senior Planner.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I think, do we have them up on Zoom? Or were they almost there? Okay. My primary purpose this afternoon is really to introduce someone else who's going to do the talking. And that's Raymond Kwong and Ryan Chu of BC Housing, and they're going to share some information about the Affordable Home Ownership Program. The reason we invited them this afternoon is because this evening you have a rezoning concept coming to you that will part of the area to be rezoned would be under affordable home ownership. So it's quite an interesting program, really exciting, and not exactly easy to understand. But
Okay.
Raymond and Ryan know what they're doing.
Okay, I will, that the Committee of the Whole receive the BC Housing Affordable Home Ownership Program report and a presentation from Ryan Chu, Senior Development Manager, and Raymond Wong, Provincial Director, Housing Hub BC Housing.
Move receipt.
All in favor? Carried.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak to you on behalf of BC Housing and the Housing Hub and our presentation on the Affordable Home Ownership Program. Did you want us to put up the presentation, or did you guys have that yourselves?
Please put it up. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me just grab it. Hang on. Okay, let me start my share screen. Can you all see that?
Now we can.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I'll just get right into it. So this is an introduction to the Housing Hub, to the village of Cumberland. And today, myself, I'm the Provincial Director of the Housing Hub. My name is Raymond Kwong, and I also have Ryan Chu, who is the Senior Development Manager on my team, who I guess coordinated this presentation with you all today. So just quickly, just some background context around the Housing Hub and BC Housing. So the Housing Hub was created based on the 30-point housing plan for housing affordability in British Columbia called Homes for BC. That was created back in 2017, informing the provincial government of their provincial budget in 2018. And in 2018, the province announced Building BC, which was the funded programs to tackle the issue of housing affordability across the province by providing BC Housing with funded dollars to work on social and affordable housing. At the same time, the 30-point housing plan talked about the so-called missing middle. That was a major, I guess, political topic at the time about all the workforce housing folks, all the middle income earners, and what the government was doing about those households that across British Columbia that were tackling issues around housing affordability. So the government gave us a new mandate, BC Housing, the new mandate to provide programs for the middle income household. And so the Housing Hub was created in 2018 for that purpose. So within the 30-point housing plan, the specific point number 15 is talking about that missing middle. And it was to generate more than 14,000 rental units for the middle income households across the province, targeting towards skilled workers, also working with businesses across the province who were facing issues with workers not being able to either rent or own in their communities. So therefore, business owners were having difficulties finding workers to work in their communities. So there was some targeted dollars and whatnot for the coming years, but that has since changed since the Housing Hub was created. But in any event, the main purpose is to create more affordable rental and home ownership opportunities while also protecting the existing housing stock and BC Housing in general, creating new housing for the most vulnerable. So in terms of the continuum of how BC Housing works, the Building BC program is on the left-hand side. That's the $7 billion program that was announced in 2018 over a 10-year period, targeting homelessness, housing with support services, and social housing. In the middle is where BC Housing provides rental assistance directly to the private market, to the tenants living in private market units, under shelter aid for elderly renters. That's our one of the rental assistance programs, and our rental assistance program for families. So on the right-hand side is where the Housing Hub comes in, and where the affordable rental as well as the affordable home ownership side of the business comes in, where the Housing Hub is targeted for the middle income earner. So how we work together is obviously with municipal and local governments and the province, as well as the federal government, the not-for-profit sector, private sector, and the community. So we try to bring together all of these groups in order to facilitate the middle income product. So just to give you a flavor, we're targeting usually an average of between $70,000 to $150,000 household incomes, although our maximum thresholds for the middle income earner is $121,000 for 2022 for residents with studios or one-bedroom type units. That's families without children. For families with children, those are residential units with 2 or more bedrooms. The gross household income as a maximum threshold is $173,800 for 2022. So we work with various different organizations, from charities to land trust, indigenous groups to developers, faith-based groups, and local governments in order to achieve these types of product. So as mentioned, that Building BC side was $7 billion over the next 10 years, which was direct equity injections as well as subsidies for that most vulnerable population. Whereas the Housing Hub is dealing with the middle income product. So we have 2 programs under the Housing Hub. The first one is the affordable rental, which is under what we call the Provincial Rental Supply Program. And then the second one is the ownership-based housing, which is the affordable home ownership program, which we will be speaking more in depth today for you guys. The Provincial Rental Supply Program is basically more of a purpose-built rental supply program, where we're working with developers and providing them with low-cost financing in order to facilitate rental product in the various different communities that the developers want to build in. These are some of the typical projects that we've done. PC Urban in Kelowna, Carrington in West Kelowna, West Urban in various different locations from Parksville to Nanaimo to Squamish. Mosaic as a developer that we worked with in Abbotsford, as well as many other developers and projects under this provincial rental supply. In terms of the affordable home ownership program, this is a slightly different animal than the provincial rental supply, because we're focused on providing ownership opportunities for the middle income, whereas the provincial rental supply is really geared towards creating rental supply. So how the affordable home ownership program is different than the provincial rental program is that there's more of a partnership and more of a reliance on a three-way partnership between BC Housing through the Housing Hub, the developer, and the municipality. And it's a three-way partnership, which is very, very important, which I'll get into the details in a sec. So how the program basically works is we try to garner savings from the three partners, right? And from those savings, we are then able to provide a benefit to the purchaser when they go and purchase one of these units. So how we go about garnering these savings is through the three different partners. So BC Housing, if we're coming in and providing low-cost financing, then there's going to be interest savings to the developer in the pro forma. If the developer is coming in, they might decide to give up, let's say, some of their profits or a percentage of their profits in order to participate in the affordable homeownership program. But the main partner is the municipality. And why we say that is the municipality is the one that is the authority and the approving authority on density, on various different aspects of the property itself. So in terms of the contributions towards savings, we try to ask for the municipal partner to provide some of these concessions. So these concessions could be, as I said, additional density. It could be in the form of deferment of fees. That could be, a community amenity contribution fee. It could be parking relaxations or any other number of relaxations that could be garnered from the partnership. And we would quantify all of these items in order for us to then determine what the exact amount of savings for each unit would be. And then that would be what we would pass through to the purchaser through a second mortgage. And we would pass through the second mortgage as a zero interest, zero payment mortgage for the purchaser for up to 25 years. So the buyer eligibility in terms of under this program, the purchaser has to be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. They would have to have resided in BC for at least the past 12 months and living in some non-ownership type tenure prior to purchase, whether they're living in rental housing currently, living with family or friends, or they could be in a co-op situation or other non-ownership type tenure. As mentioned, I mentioned the maximum household incomes there for you for 2022. And then the purchaser also has to qualify for a first mortgage from a qualified bank. So some of the sample affordable homeownership program projects that we have to provide for you today, to kind of give you an example, are these four: Cascadia Green in North Van, Haven by Chard in Victoria, Sparrow by Abstract in Victoria, and we're working on another project in the city of Surrey called 104 Plaza. So as an example, the Abstract development in the city of Victoria, we were able to garner some savings in the project, and in this particular case, we garnered savings in the neighborhood of roughly 10% of the purchase price. So studios were being sold for $310,000, but because of the savings that we were able to garner, we were able to provide, in this particular case, a $35,000 affordable homeownership program second mortgage to the purchaser. So in essence, the purchaser was able to purchase this unit at $310,000, but their net effect of the responsibility of the purchaser is only $275,000 in that particular case. So the annual incomes that would have been required to purchase one of these units, these studio units, was about $43,000 at the time, because that was like probably a year and something ago when this got marketed. So the stress test at that time was lower, so incomes were lower at that time to qualify as well. So this is an example of one of the projects. The second example is Chard, again, similar in terms of the percentage of 10%. You can see the second mortgages that were captured on these units range from 33,000 to 71,000. That was all in relation to all the savings that we garnered from the three partners. And again, the income levels required to purchase one of these units, depending on the unit types, range from 70 to 150,000. But in essence, BC Housing was able to provide a 10% second equity participating mortgage. So in essence, the purchaser only needs to come up with their minimal down payment, which is typically 5%. So in some cases, they might decide to come up with more down payment. That's kind of the choice of the purchaser. But added with our 10% in this particular case, then the purchaser would have a lower premium on the CMHC insurance premiums, or if they came up with 10%, down payment added with our 10%, then they would be going for a conventional mortgage with the bank, right? So this is the Chard example in Victoria. Then we have the city of North Van. So in this particular case, we had 9 units in this building, but it had a total of 63 units in this building. So there was a discussion early on with the city of North Van, basically stating that they wanted to target workers in their community to be able to purchase one of these units, and they wanted to target a lower kind of income for these workers in one of these in these units that for this building. And so instead of applying the savings across all 63 units, which probably would have only amounted to maybe, 5% second mortgage capture, we decided to put all the savings towards less number of units. So in this particular case, we put all the savings towards 9 units instead of 63, which created a bigger second affordable homeownership program mortgage. In this particular case, the mortgages range from $127,000 to $578,000 that was being provided by BC Housing through that second mortgage capture. And so a great example is, a normal 3-bedroom in this market would be selling for $1.3 million. But because of the second mortgage that we're able to offer, which in this particular case is 40% of that purchase price, the purchaser's amount that they have to be responsible for in terms of their down payment and the mortgage is $753,000 to $767,000. So in essence, it pushes the income levels that a family would be able to purchase one of these units down to that $163,000, $166,000 level, versus if they purchase this on the market, they'd probably need to come up with 20% of 1.3 million, which is $260,000 down payment, plus need to have income probably north of $250,000 just to qualify for that purchase, right? So this significantly reduces the income, keeps, let's say 2 working parents that may be making, 70, 80,000 each, that would then be able to qualify for a unit of this nature, right? So, or, the alternative would be these folks would have to maybe purchase something in Surrey or Langley or Abbotsford and then have to commute 2 hours one way each day, right? So this is kind of the beauty and benefit of the program that we do through the Affordable Homeownership Program. So those are the examples, and we're open to questions, or if you guys need some clarity on any of this, we're happy to discuss.
Who would like to start? Councillor Kettler?
Thank you for the presentation. One of the things that came up was when you were discussing whether to put the apply the savings across all of the units, or to concentrate them on just a few units to give a bigger savings to the applicant. How does that affect the funds that would be recovered by the municipality?
It doesn't. So what happens is that BC Housing, so let's just use an easy number example just for the sake of discussion purposes. So let's say the municipality's contribution is $1 million. And let's say there's 10 units in this building. So each unit would receive $100,000, right? Based on that $1 million example. So let's say instead the municipality says, no, we want to create deeper levels of affordability. So instead of $1 million, instead of over 10 units, we want to put it over 2 units. So now it's $500,000 each on those 2 units, right? So BC Housing still captures that $1 million within the affordable home ownership second mortgage. So what would happen is BC Housing would provide a second mortgage on title. So the purchaser would still purchase it at that market price, but they get, in this particular case, a $500,000 affordable home ownership second mortgage. And that mortgage is registered on title. So in the future, if that purchaser goes to sell their home in the future, whatever that future price is, BC Housing's mortgage would go up or down depending on what the market price of that unit is, right? So if the original purchase price of the unit was $1 million and it went to, let's say, $2 million, well then our that $500,000 mortgage was also go up by that same percentage, right? So that, in that particular case, the $500,000 mortgage would be equal to $1 million. So then at that point in time, it would depend on what happens with the purchaser that becomes a seller. When they become a seller, if they sell it to a person that's, or a household that does not qualify, then BC Housing would get the proceeds back, right? So that $1 million, if it went from $1 million original purchase price to $2 million purchase price, BC Housing would get $1 million back. If it was sold to a qualified buyer, then BC Housing would just extend that mortgage to the new purchaser, right? So we would discharge the old mortgage, recharge a new mortgage to the new purchaser, and then provide that zero interest, zero payment for another 25 years. But if we did receive the money, what would happen is we would then stroke a check to the municipality through our agreement with you guys, which then gets put into an affordable housing fund for the village of Cumberland in this particular case. And you guys would then be able to use that $1 million for the purposes of affordable housing, whether that's purchased land, whether that's putting an equity contribution to an affordable rental project, or future affordable home ownership units. So that's basically how the program works. So the amount that we capture is not always just the municipality's contribution. There could be BC Housing's contribution, as I mentioned. If we provided a loan to the developer, there would be savings based on our interest, because we offer a lower interest rate than they would typically get from a bank. Then there would be interest savings. So some of that $1 million in this example could be our contribution, or it could be the developer's contribution, where they're saying, instead of making, let's say 20% return on their equity, they're only making 15% because they want to participate in providing something back to the community. So in that particular case, we also capture that within that $1 million. So it's not always just the municipality's money in that second mortgage, if that makes any sense.
Thank you very much. My question is, if as a homeowner or a renter, are there fees for maintenance and upgrades to the facility? Is that included in their monthly payments, or how do they look after the building?
So just like any real estate owner or purchaser of real estate, if you're a renter, that's a different story altogether. Renters just pay their rent, and then the landlord is responsible for any capital improvements, property taxes, all of that stuff. But in this particular case, because these purchasers, these affordable homeownership program purchasers, are in essence owners of that real estate, so they would be responsible to pay for their property taxes on their unit. They would be responsible for any strata fees that were that's applicable to this particular unit. And then if there are any special assessments for, you know, capital improvements because the strata approved that, they would be responsible for that as well. Just like any other homeowner, they would be responsible for these items. So how we would calculate the income is try to ensure that they're paying no more than, you know, 30% of their income to qualify for these. Having said that, there are some people that decide that if they still want to purchase a unit, even though their incomes in order to pay for the debt servicing is greater than 30%, we still allow that so long as they're under our maximum income thresholds. Then that's their choice to put more of their income to housing instead of those other things that homeowners might want, or sorry, households might want to spend their money on, which could be food, programs for their children, et cetera, right?
Councillor Brown?
Thank you. Thanks so much for the presentation. It was challenging to understand just exactly how this works. Mike, I have two sort of areas of question. The first is that this doesn't remove the housing from the market. It's regular market housing, so it will, regardless of who purchases it initially, when it sells, it's vulnerable to market increases. Is that correct?
It's vulnerable to market increases or decreases. So if the market goes up or down, the mortgages will also go up or down because we're not accepting any payments and it's a zero interest mortgage. That's why it's called an equity participating mortgage. So I'll just use an easy number example just for the sake of discussion purposes. So let's say the original purchase price was $500,000 and let's say 5 years later, the original purchaser decides to sell. Whatever that market price is, let's say it went up to $600,000 and the original mortgage was, let's say, 10%. That mortgage would go from $50,000, which was the original 10% value, up to $60,000, which is the new 10% value based on $600,000. If the market price went down from $500,000 to $400,000, BC Housing's second mortgage would also go down on the same percentage, which is 10%, which was the original savings value, to $40,000, if that makes sense. So it is subject to the up and down of the market.
Okay, and so when that person has to pay off that mortgage, if it's gone up in that way, that's part of they're paying that back as well.
Yeah, they're paying that back through the proceeds of their sale, right? They're not physically having to come up with that money. It's because they've received that benefit, right? It's kind of like how our program works is kind of like if I'm a purchaser and I'm, let's say 20 years old or 20 some odd years old, and I'm first getting into the market and my parents are helping me, but instead of charging me for that equity that they're putting in, they're charging me zero interest and zero payment. So in essence, it's almost like a mortgage of the bank of mom and pop, except BC Housing is that bank of mom and pop in this particular case, and we're not charging interest. We're not asking for the purchaser to give us any payments, but we are participating in that up or down of the market. So that's kind of how the program works. But how we capture the percentage, that 10% or that whatever that percentage, is based on all of the savings that we're able to garner, right? So if let's say, for example, again, easy numbers, let's say project is worth $10 million, right, in total, but we were able to capture $1 million worth of savings, well, then that represents 10% of that project, right? If we're able to capture more or less, it would just basically depend on the actual calculations of the savings, right? So the density that would be given, we would quantify that. The if there's any deferment in fees by the municipality, we would count that. If there's, let's say, parking relaxations, we would count, how much it would cost to build that extra parking, and count that. If there's interest savings, we would count that. So we'd actually quantify it in order to come up with that original percentage, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks. It does. And so that leads me to my second question, which is, we're a small community that is still dealing with aging infrastructure and all kinds of other things. And so we may not have as much to give as we would like. So it's nice to hear that BC Housing can also participate in that reduction. But I'm just curious how that works. So should we only be able to come up with a 5% through density or something? How does BC Housing decide how much they're willing to contribute to a particular project? And is that based on a certain size or volume or something like that?
Yeah, so there's probably a little bit of a misunderstanding in terms of what BC Housing contributes. So BC Housing only contributes our financing, which is the interest savings. So BC Housing does not physically cut checks to the municipality upfront to you guys in terms of the savings, right? So again, I'll just use that easy number example. Well, so let's say it's a $10 million project and this village of Cumberland is able to come up with 5%, which is $500,000, and that's captured through, let's say, density increase or parking relaxation. So there's $500,000. If BC Housing's savings interest is only, let's say, $50,000, there's only $550,000. We don't then go and cut another check for $450,000 to make it $1 million, which represents 10% of that project. So if all of the savings capture was only $550,000, then what we would do in that particular case is then spread that $550,000 over however many number of units that then gets discussed through us and you guys as a municipality as to how many units we want to include in this program in order for the developer to also feel that they want to go ahead with this type of product. So let's say we were able to land on that, and then that's how we would basically move forward, right? And then I talked about how that money would come back to the municipality based on the up or down. So if that 550 increased in value in the future, that's what would be returned to the municipality in the future.
Right. So I misunderstood what you said earlier in the presentation, that there was some other means of contribution, but all the entire reduction would have to come from the village.
Nope. So there's the village portion, there's the interest savings portion from BC Housing, and there could be a reduction in profit from the developer side. So in some cases where we've negotiated with the developer, we're saying to them, in order for them to get, some speed through the rezoning processes or a feel good, they want to contribute back to the community, they might want to give something up as well. So they might also want to contribute. So again, it's not only the municipality that will contribute. If at the end of the day, BC Housing does not provide financing, or the developer doesn't give up profits and the only savings is through the municipality, then yes, in that particular case, it's only the municipality's contribution, but BC Housing will capture that and then make sure that the developer doesn't put that in their pocket or the purchaser doesn't put that in their pocket. We facilitate that savings through the program. So then it all comes back to the municipality at some future point in time.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Councillor Sproul, do you have a question?
Not really, but this seems a really great idea. And it looks to me then that the developer has to bite some of the profit or be willing to take a little bit less money in exchange for, sorry about that, am I losing my voice? In exchange for getting to develop in a certain area, I don't think I'm going to be able to talk. Anyway, I really like the idea of it, and there's all kinds of, not schemes, but here in the Comox Valley, there's Habitat for Humanity that uses sweat equity. In this case, there's a way of providing some kind of cash incentives without that kind of system. Anyway, I look forward to seeing more of this.
Yes, Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, sorry, I had one more question about, the example in North Van where you had 9 units in a rather large building. I assume there's quite a lot of competition for those 9 units. How are you guys doing the process of selecting who gets to go in there? And is it BC Housing, or does that responsibility fall somewhere else?
So there are some conditions, I guess, if you will, from the city of North Van, where purchasers need to, first of all, meet BC Housing's criteria in terms of being under the Affordable Homeownership program, as well as criteria that the municipality has. So they have their additional income criteria, as well as their living and working in the municipality criteria. So it's not to say that somebody that was living in Richmond could all of a sudden, I've got this opportunity, so now I'm going to go and buy one of these units. So from that perspective, it kind of eliminates that kind of situation in that example. But at the same time, it's still a first come, first served basis through the developer's marketing. So the developer is still ultimately responsible for the project because they, in this particular case, are selling, a total of 63 units, 9 of which are under our program. So they still ultimately have to sell these units, but based on the criteria. So BC Housing still needs to vet those purchasers. So when the purchaser enters into a contract of purchase and sale with the developer, that gets passed on to BC Housing. We vet all the conditions and then approve that purchaser for the purchase. And so that's how that kind of process would work.
Thank you.
Okay. My question is concerning the partnership memorandum of understanding. Is this an agreement that is used throughout to all the municipalities? Is it a standard one?
Yeah, so we have a template that's called a Memorandum of Understanding. That's a two-way agreement between BC Housing and the municipality. It's a template document, but having said that, it's not exactly the same for every municipality because some municipalities might have some slightly different things that they can or cannot do. And so we tweak it a little bit here and there, but generally speaking, the template is the same. We also have a second agreement, which is called the Project Partnering Agreement, and that is the three-way agreement between the municipality, BC Housing, and the developer. And that's on the specific project itself, right? So the MOU is the two-way agreement. That's the omnibus agreement that talks about the overarching affordable home ownership program and how BC Housing would be the stewards of these mortgages and then return those monies back to the municipality in the future. The project partnering agreement is the specific document that outlines how much savings are captured in each particular project that gets brought to the municipality. So the MOU is the overarching agreement, and then if we have multiple projects in your municipality under this program, then we would have multiple project partnering agreements with you. That's on a three-way basis.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Brown?
I'm just wondering if you have an example from a small community.
We're working on those. So we had a partnership with Sycamoose, with Tofino. I believe we're working with Eucalypt and a few other smaller municipalities as well. Okay. So, but we can provide our template documents over to you, not a problem.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think it's going to take a little while to digest all the information that you gave us, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for your guys' time and listening to what we have to say. We're happy to answer any further questions as you guys continue to discuss with staff or amongst yourselves, and feel free to have staff reach out back to us if there's any clarifications or anything else that you need from us. And we look forward to potentially working with your municipality to bring projects of this nature forward.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll be doing that.
All right. Thank you.
Next, the Committee of the Whole received the delegation of Sarah Kavanagh, Province of BC, Michael Blackburn, and Amanda Kellett, Government of Canada, and Melissa Kwok, sister of the Comox First Nation, regarding Comox treaty negotiations.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. And welcome to our meeting. And we're going to turn it over to who the speaker. Oops. Yes, I know. I saw you coming up. To the speaker.
I'm not sure, is this on? Yes. Okay. Unfortunately, Comox can't participate today. There's been an unfortunate death recently today. So the community is mourning at the moment. So, and I'm sorry, we do also have someone else with the federal government. It's Mary-Louise Irmersch. She's the newest negotiator for the federal government on these negotiations. So really...
Sorry, could you say her last name again?
I'm going to slaughter it. I know I will. Irmersch. It's written on the screen there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just for our recording,
I apologize,
please.
Mary-Louise. So today we wanted to give you an update generally on what's happening with the negotiations and our public outreach that we've actually started. So, and we want the community generally to know what's going on. So all of the Comox Valley and even the Sayward Valley. So, next slide, please. Or do I have a pointy thing? Ah, I do have a pointy thing. Okay, perfect, thank you. So I just wanted to start with some quotes from some very honorable people. Reconciliation is not for once. Our future and the well-being of our children rests with the kind of relationships we build today. And that's so true. So our approach has really shifted over the last 5-6 years. So we are really looking at reconciliation as building a new relationship with Indigenous people. And that's an awareness of the past, mutual respect, a new fiscal relationship, and I say that in the sense that we've always looked at Canada as being the main supplier of funding for treaties generally, and the province is now stepping up quite a bit more in that regard, and a real commitment to actually making a commitment to change and action. And this requires not just federal, provincial governments. It also is local governments, it's NGOs, it's the public. Everyone can actually play a really important role in reconciliation. Okay. I am obviously challenged.
You have to point somewhere else.
I have to point somewhere else.
Where does she point?
Whoops. Okay. So in regards to the federal government, the provincial government, we really are showing our commitment through some legislation. So the federal government has enacted Bill C-15, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. The province in 2019 enacted the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People Act. And in that act, what we try to do is align our provincial laws with DRIPA. And we're going through that process now. And we've just announced our action plan as to how we're going to go about doing that and which pieces of legislation we're going to focus on first. The other thing that's very interesting about this act is it allows us to enter into shared decision making with First Nations, so Indigenous governing bodies, which will allow us to really kind of give some real teeth to reconciliation, because First Nations will actually have the ability to even do consent-based decision making with the province, which will require some amendments to legislation to allow that to occur. But these are the things that the province is really looking at. And the focus is now on long-term agreements. So not these short-term, bits and pieces here. It's long-term, and the focus is on self-determination and economic independence. And this is all to improve quality of life, right? Next one, please, Rachel. So treaties are the most comprehensive form of reconciliation. And we call them the ultra-marathon of reconciliation because they take so long. We've been in negotiations with Comox for 28 years, and we're getting close. But these treaties, they comprise of many different aspects, not just lands and jurisdiction. There's the self-government portion of it. There's natural resources. There's shared decision-making. But since we started this process, we only have 4 treaties. So it's a slow process. But there's been a very distinct change in how we approach treaties now, whereas before they were final agreements. So they weren't treaties, they were final agreements. So we put everything but the kitchen sink in there. We were done. Thank you very much. You go that way, we go that way. It was more of a divorce. The approach now is a partnership. So it's a living agreement that can actually change over time. And we're incorporating different aspects into the treaty to allow changes to be incorporated. So if there is a right we didn't know existed right now, we have the ability in the future, if a court says, no, this is an Aboriginal right, we have the ability now with something we call the orderly process to bring that into the treaty. So it continues to grow. We also have something called we have a 10-year periodic review, so we look at the treaty every 10 years. I always think of it as, good marriages, it's time to check in, do your marriage counseling that once every 10 years to make sure the agreement is actually still working and doing what it was meant to do. So we have that automatic check-in now too. The other aspect that's very important, I think, is the previous treaties. When you think of the historic treaties, they were cede, release, and surrender. Those were extinguishment. Then we had the kind of modification of rights, Section 35 rights. Now what we're doing in these treaties is called the non-assertion. So within the treaty, we set out all the rights that the First Nation can assert. If we've missed anything, they agree that they won't assert them. So it's not extinguishment. They still exist. Okay, next slide, please. As I said, Comox, we've been in these negotiations for 28 years. We signed the agreement in principle, which kind of sets out the general idea of the treaty, base lands, back in 2012. So it's been 10 years. 2019, we signed an agreement to revitalize these negotiations, to really put our efforts into trying to conclude in 2 years. And then COVID hit, which kind of slowed things down. And we are now continuing our negotiations, but we're at a point where we believe we can do a final land and cash offer this fall. So if we do that, then we're looking at getting to what we call a chief negotiator's understanding. So basically the agreement is done in the sense that we know exactly what's going to there, nothing's really going to change. Most of the appendices work are done, all the side agreements are done. And we're looking at about having that done in about a year. So very ambitious, very intense amount of work that has to take place over the next year. Once we get to that initialing stage, Comox then will take the treaty to their membership for a vote. If it passes their ratification, then it comes to BC and then Canada. During that time, there's still a lot of work to do. We have to do our surveys to ensure that all the different interests on the different parcels have been removed or replaced. We set out in the treaty if there's any replacement interest. Sometimes we have to do deletions from the provincial forest. All that takes quite a bit of work. So that's once we know exactly what the lands are going to be. So really the effective date, and again ambitious, would be 2026. And I kind of just went through this, so how it works, so I think we can skip this slide. Now the Comox territory extends all the way to Sayward Valley and almost down to like just past Nanoose. So it's very large territory, but the core areas are up in the Sayward Valley and the Comox Valley. So the lands that we're focusing on are in those two areas. So not in the Campbell River area, the kind of two extremes. Next, thank you. So when we look at, these are the lands that were at agreement of principle stage. So these are lands that are public knowledge, they're out there, they're on our website. So this is up in Sayward. The purple is Comox's reserve up there, and the orange are the agreement of principle lands. So that orange one is actually part of their woodlot that they have up there. Next one. The bulk of the land is actually down in the Comox Valley, as you can see. So we've got the Williams Beach area up top. When it's slashed, the green slash means it will be park public access. And then we have the old Forbidden Plateau Ski Hill. And then we have Sage Hills, which is the pink, which is the province bought that 10 years ago. It was a foreclosure. So we bought it in anticipation of providing it to Comox as treaty land. The orange big chunk beside that is the Royston Forest, which is Comox's current woodlot, and then the purples are the reserves. Now, the interesting point that there's unique to Comox is that if you look at the rest of the province, so you go over to the mainland and you look at the province generally, 90% is Crown land, 10% is private. Here it's flipped. So it's 14% Crown land, 86% private. So it's actually very difficult to find Crown land to reconcile with Comox. And we've done the best we can. But what we've also done is, under most treaties, the premise is all the treaty land is public land, meaning public access for recreation, unless, of course, the First Nation wants to use it for something that's incompatible for public use. To reflect the situation in this area, we've done it reverse here too. We've said all the land that Comox has is private to reflect the kind of circumstance that's here, unless there's a strong public interest to keep it not public. And in that case, Sandy Islands, so Tree Island, will remain public as a park. So we've kind of flipped it on edge to reflect the unique situation of where we are here and the legacy of the ENN land grants. Okay, next one. So when Comox has their lands, they will have lawmaking authority over zoning and development of their lands. And again, as I've said, we're flipping it here. All lands are private, or we've specifically designated some as park or public lands. And Comox will be able to convert those public lands into private with the consent of the province. And again, if it's in the sense that it's incompatible with public access. Okay. Obviously, a major component of treaty is self-government. So Comox will have the right to self-govern, and we have, on the next page, I believe, a list of laws, and that's just a handful. There's many laws, and we have something called the concurrent law model. So basically, on Comox lands, federal, provincial, and Comox laws all apply. So Comox doesn't have to necessarily draw down their authority in a certain area right away. It's discretionary. They can do it whenever they want, but there's no vacuum because provincial and federal laws will still apply. Okay. So prior to making the offer in the fall, we want to make sure everyone's aware, has the ability to provide input. So we have launched kind of our public outreach. We started in Cumberland, started at May Days. We had an information booth. We are intending to shortly send out letters to interest holders, to anyone who's an adjacent landowner who might have a parcel, their parcel might be adjacent to a parcel that may become treaty settlement land. And shockingly enough, I was surprised, it's about 400 people we have to send letters to. I thought it would be much less than that. So we're doing presentations to local government. We're doing, we did Bay Days in Union Bay. We're doing, we'll be in Canada Day this Friday. We'll have an information booth there, and Nautical Days will be there for 3 days. In September, we will be hosting open houses. So in Courtenay at the CBRD building on the 10th, Union Bay in the evening on the 12th, and then in Sayward on September 17th. And we're also we have a website set up too, and we're going to be seeking kind of online feedback. Anyone who wants information, we have a general email address that people can email questions to us, and they'll be answered. So that's our push over the next few months, is to ensure that as many people as possible know that this is coming and have the opportunity for input. And we suspect a lot of people, these are the types of things we're expecting people to have some questions around, access to lands. You know, I think a lot of the Forbidden Plateau Ski Hill, a lot of people have want to ensure that there's still continued access. Water and wildlife management. Private property access, I suspect a lot of people have some questions around that, how people can participate more actively in reconciliation, and taxation. We always get questions around taxations, and then what self-determination, self-government means. And then heritage sites and culture and heritage, or culture, arts and culture. So, as I said, we're pushed for public engagement over the next few months, closing offer in the fall, hopefully to initial this agreement in early 2023, probably spring, and then ratification by the 3 parties over the next year or 2 after that, and then coming to effect 2026. Next page. And then these are the contacts, and I don't know whether the village has a website, whether you post presentations like this on it, generally, or do you create links?
Yes.
Okay, because then the people would have the ability to contact us. And I just wanted to end with a couple of quotes. So reconciliation is not just word, reconciliation is action. It's our premier. Reconciliation is a societal imperative requiring awareness, understanding, and participation from everyone. And I think, you know, in the Valley, we are very fortunate because people here are generally very supportive of treaty. We've gotten very positive feedback. And even things like the purchase of Couscousin, you know, between the Courtenay and NGOs, that really demonstrates the commitment in this area to reconciliation. So it's actually timely, and this will be the first treaty under this government. So this is pretty exciting, right? So, this is probably the best place for it to be because it's such support. So I'm really pleased to be working on this and living here.
Could we get a copy of your presentation? I took notes, but I'm not fast enough.
I know, and I speak quickly. Rachel does have a copy of it.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions from members of council? Councillor Sproul?
No, I'm quite familiar because it's been such a long process when we used to see it at the regional district, and I'm following along with that with great interest. So, thank you.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, I'm very excited for Comox First Nation, and excited for you, Sarah, because I know you've been working on this for a really long time, and it's wonderful to see it all come to fruition. I kind of feel like things have really sort of picked up pace lately, even though, you know, we did have COVID. So I think, you know, kudos to you and Comox First Nation for still keeping that pressure on and continuing forward through all that. That's really great. Yeah, and I'm just happy to see it all working out. Thanks.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you and congratulations. And yeah, I'm looking forward to Comox being part of the local government here and moving forward. Yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff. So thank you for your hard work.
And thank you very much for everything. I know it's taken years and sometimes it's been frustrating on all sides, but keeping persistent and keeping it and getting there. And thank you very much for all the work that you've all done to keep this on track. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming and appreciate your attendance. Oh, question period, yes. We have a question period. Please, if you would like to ask a question, please email info@cumberland.ca using subject line question period. Please note, limit to questions only. Comments will not be read out. Quiet time.
Could I just say something?
Okay, closed portion. Someone make the recommendation, please.
I'll move that council close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to consider B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality and the provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party.
Second. All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second. All in favor?